Dr. Minji Park stood in the empty docking bay, her hands shaking as she stared at the vacant space where her son's ship should have been. The metal floor was cold under her feet, and the silence felt heavy around her. 3 weeks had passed since anyone had heard from Do-Yun. Her son was 25 years old and worked as a research scientist. He studied alien plants and animals on distant worlds. His job took him to dangerous places, but he always stayed in contact. Every few days, he would send messages home. He would tell his mother about the strange creatures he found and the beautiful planets he visited. But 3 weeks ago, the messages stopped. Minji walked to the communication desk and pressed the replay button again. She had listened to Do-Hyun's last message hundreds of times, but she needed to hear his voice once more. "Hi, Mom," came her son's recorded voice through the speakers. "I'm heading to the Outer Rim to study some new species. The locals here told me about creatures that can survive in space without any protection. Can you believe that? I should be back in 2 weeks. Don't worry about me. I love you." The message ended with silence. Minji closed her eyes and tried to push away the fear that grew stronger each day. She was a scientist, just like her son. She knew that space was dangerous. Ships disappeared sometimes. Equipment failed. Pirates attacked lone vessels. But Do-Hyun was careful. He was smart. He knew how to handle himself. She walked to the main office of the Spaceport Authority. The clerk behind the desk looked up when she entered. He had seen her many times over the past 3 weeks, Mrs. Park, he said with a tired voice. "I told you yesterday. We still have no news about your son's ship." "His name is Do-Hyun Park," Minji said firmly. "His ship is called the Discovery. He was traveling to Research Station Gamma 7 in the Outer Rim. Someone must know what happened to him." The clerk looked at his computer screen and shook his head. "Ma'am, ships go missing in that area all the time. The Outer Rim is wild space. There are no patrol ships there, no rescue services. People who go there know the risks." "But you must have some information," Minji insisted. "Emergency signals? Debris? Anything?" "I'm sorry," the clerk said, "but your son's ship vanished without a trace. The best thing you can do is wait and hope." Minji left the office feeling angry and helpless. She had been a military engineer for 15 years before becoming a scientist. She knew how bureaucrats worked. They would file reports and hold meetings, but they would not actually do anything to help. She decided to go to the Galactic Council building in the city center. If the local authorities would not help her, maybe the galactic government would. The council building was enormous and made of white stone that seemed to glow in the sunlight. Aliens from dozens of different species walked through the halls. Some looked like humans with different colored skin. Others were completely strange, with extra arms or tentacles or no faces at all. Minji found her way to the missing persons department. The office was small and crowded with worried families from many different worlds. She waited in line for 2 hours before reaching the front desk. The alien behind the desk had purple skin and 4 eyes. His name tag said Officer Kent. He looked at Minji with obvious boredom. "Next," he said in a mechanical voice. "My son is missing," Minji began. "His name is Do-Hyun Park. He's human, from Earth. His ship disappeared 3 weeks ago near Research Station Gamma 7. Officer Kent typed something on his computer without looking up. "Species? Human. Ship class? Small research vessel, the Discovery. Location of disappearance? Outer Rim, near Gamma 7 Station." Officer Kent stopped typing and finally looked at her. "Ma'am, the Outer Rim is outside our jurisdiction. We don't send rescue missions there." "But my son is missing," Minji said, trying to keep her voice calm. "Surely you can send someone to look for him." "Humans lose ships in deep space all the time," Officer Kent said with a shrug. "Your species doesn't have the technology for safe deep space travel. You should stick to your home system." Minji felt her anger rising. "What do you mean by that?" "Look, lady," Officer Kent said, leaning back in his chair. "Humans are new to space travel. You've only been out here for what, 50 years? Most species need centuries to develop proper space technology. Your ships are primitive. Your navigation systems are unreliable. Your weapons are weak. When you go to dangerous places like the Outer Rim, bad things happen. So you won't help me find my son? I'll file a report, Officer Kent said, turning back to his computer. If anyone finds wreckage or a signal, we'll let you know. But don't get your hopes up. The Outer Rim is full of pirates and slavers. They love catching primitive species like humans. Minji left the building feeling more angry than before. She walked through the city streets, past alien shops and restaurants, thinking about what the officer had said. Humans were considered primitive by the galaxy. Their technology was thought to be weak and unreliable. But Minji knew something that most people didn't know. For the past 20 years, Earth had been secretly developing advanced technology. They had studied crashed alien ships. They had reverse-engineered alien computers and weapons. They had built things that could match or even surpass what other species had. The reason other aliens thought humans were primitive was simple. Earth's government had decided to keep their advanced technology secret. They pretended to be weak, while they built up their strength. It was a smart strategy, but it meant that when humans needed help, no one took them seriously. Minji made a decision as she walked home. If the official authorities would not help her find Do-hyun, she would find him herself. She had connections in the military. She knew about Earth's secret technology projects. She had helped design some of the most advanced ships ever built. She would take one of those ships and go to the Outer Rim alone. That night, Minji sat in her apartment looking at photos of Do-hyun. There were pictures of him as a child, playing in the garden. Photos from his graduation from university. Images of him standing next to his research ship before his first mission. Her son had always been curious about the universe. Even as a child, he had wanted to explore and discover new things. That curiosity had led him to become a scientist, and now it might have gotten him killed. But Minji refused to believe he was dead. Somewhere out in the vast darkness of space, Do-hyun was waiting for rescue, and his mother would not let him down. She picked up her communication device and made a call to her old friend Admiral Yojin at Earth Defense Command. "Minji?" came the surprised voice through the speaker. "It's been years since we talked. How are you?" "I need a favor," Minji said. "A big one." Admiral Yojin met Minji at a secret military base hidden deep underground beneath the mountains outside Seoul. The elevator went down for what felt like forever before the doors finally opened. Minji stepped out into a massive hangar filled with ships unlike anything the public had ever seen. "Welcome to Project Deep Strike," Admiral Yojin said as they walked between the strange vessels. "What you see here must never be spoken about to anyone." Minji nodded as she looked around in amazement. The ships were sleek and black, with smooth curves that seemed to bend light around them. They looked nothing like the bulky human ships that other species mocked throughout the galaxy. "For 20 years we have been building these in secret," Admiral Yojin explained. "We reverse-engineered technology from every alien ship that ever crashed on Earth. We took the best parts and made them better. These ships can outrun, outfight, and outthink anything else in the galaxy." They stopped in front of the largest ship in the hangar. It was beautiful and deadly at the same time, like a sleeping predator. "This is the Persistence," Admiral Yojin said. "It has the most advanced stealth system ever created. It can become completely invisible to all known detection methods. Its weapons can cut through any alien armor. Its shields can absorb energy that would destroy entire fleets." "And you're willing to let me take it?" Minji asked. Admiral Yojin looked at her old friend with sad eyes. "Minji, you helped design half the systems on this ship. You know it better than anyone except the original builders. And more importantly, I know you won't give up until you find Do-hyun. I'd rather have you out there in our best ship than in some piece of junk that will get you killed." 2 hours later, Minji was sitting in the pilot's chair of the Persistence, running through the pre-flight checklist. The ship's computer spoke to her in a calm, pleasant voice. "All systems are functioning perfectly, Dr. Park. Navigation is online. Weapons are armed. Stealth field is ready for activation. Where would you like to go?" "Set course for the Outer Rim," Minji said. "Specifically, the last known location of research vessel discovery." "Course plotted. Warning: that area of space is controlled by the Krathan hegemony. They are known to attack ships without warning and enslave the survivors." "I know," Minji said grimly. That's probably what happened to my son. The Persistence launched from the hidden base and flew up through Earth's atmosphere in complete silence. Once they reached space, Minji activated the stealth field and the ship vanished from all sensors. To anyone watching, it would appear that nothing was there. The journey to the outer rim took 3 days using the ship's advanced hyperspace drive. During the trip, Minji studied everything she could find about the Krathan hegemony. They were a brutal empire that conquered weaker species and used them as slaves. They were known for their cruelty and their belief that might made right. The Krathan looked like large reptiles that walked on 2 legs. They had thick armor-like skin and sharp teeth. They were physically stronger than humans and lived much longer. Their ships were big and powerful, designed to intimidate enemies into surrendering without a fight. When the Persistence dropped out of hyperspace near Do-hyun's last known location, Minji immediately began scanning for any trace of his ship. The area was empty except for a few pieces of floating debris and a Krathan patrol. 3 Krathan warships were moving in formation through the area. Each ship was 10 times larger than the Persistence, bristling with weapons and covered in heavy armor. They moved slowly, like predators who knew they owned this territory. Minji kept her ship cloaked and followed the patrol at a safe distance. She hoped they might lead her to wherever they were taking prisoners. But after several hours, the patrol just continued their routine sweep of the area. Finally, Minji decided to take direct action. She positioned the Persistence directly in front of the lead Krathan ship and decloaked. The reaction was immediate. All 3 Krathan ships stopped moving and turned their weapons toward her small vessel. "Unknown ship," came a harsh voice over the radio. "You have entered Krathan space without permission. Surrender immediately or be destroyed." "This is Dr. Minji Park of Earth," she replied calmly. "I'm looking for my son. His ship disappeared in this area 3 weeks ago. I want to know what happened to him." There was a pause. Then the sound of harsh laughter came through the radio. "A human female in a tiny ship demands answers from the mighty Krathan Empire," said the voice mockingly. "How amusing. I am Captain Sunho of the Imperial Navy. You will surrender your vessel and prepare to be taken prisoner. Your primitive technology is no match for our power." "I'll ask you one more time," Minji said, her voice getting colder. "Where is my son?" "Your son is probably dead," Captain Sunho replied with cruel amusement. "Or worse, he's working in our mines. Either way, you'll never see him again. Now surrender before I lose patience and destroy you." Instead of surrendering, Minji pressed a button on her control panel. The Persistence's weapon systems came online with a soft hum. "Computer," she said quietly. "Target all 3 ships. Prepare to disable their engines and weapons." "Targets acquired," the computer replied. "Quantum torpedoes armed. Shall I fire?" "Fire." What happened next would have been impossible for most people to believe. The Persistence, a ship no bigger than a shuttle compared to the massive Krathan warships, opened fire with weapons that seemed to bend reality itself. Blue streams of energy shot out from the small human ship and struck all 3 Krathan vessels simultaneously. Instead of bouncing off their heavy armor as expected, the quantum torpedoes tore through their hulls like paper. The lead ship's engines exploded in a shower of sparks. The second ship lost all power and began drifting helplessly. The third ship's weapon systems overloaded and shut down completely. In less than 30 seconds, 3 of the Krathan Empire's finest warships had been reduced to floating scrap metal. "Impossible," Captain Sunho's voice came through the radio, now filled with fear instead of arrogance. "Human technology cannot do this. Your ships are primitive, your weapons are weak." "You were wrong about humans," Minji replied calmly. "We're much more dangerous than you thought. Now I'm going to ask, you again? And this time you're going to give me a real answer. Where is my son?" There was a long silence on the radio. Finally, Captain Sunho spoke again, his voice defeated. "The mining facility on Krathos Prime," he admitted. "All prisoners taken in this sector are sent there to work in the quantum mines. But even if you find him, you cannot rescue him. The facility is impregnable. It's protected by orbital defense platforms and an entire fleet." "We'll see about that," Minji said. She programmed the coordinates for Krathos Prime into her navigation system. As the Persistence jumped back into hyperspace, she left the 3 disabled Krathan ships drifting in space, their crews wondering how a single human woman had just humiliated the entire Imperial Navy. Captain Sunho watched the strange human ship disappear and shook his head in disbelief. He had never seen technology like that before. None of the Krathan had. Maybe it was time to reconsider what they thought they knew about humans. Krathos Prime appeared on the Persistence's main screen like a wound in space. The planet was dark red and covered in thick clouds that swirled with poisonous gases. Massive industrial structures covered its surface, connected by tubes and bridges that stretched for hundreds of miles. Scanning planetary defenses, the ship's computer announced. Detecting 47 orbital defense platforms. Each platform is armed with heavy plasma cannons and quantum mines. There are also 63 Krathan warships in defensive positions around the planet. Minji studied the tactical display with growing concern. The Krathan had turned this world into a fortress. Any normal attack would be suicide, even with the Persistence's advanced technology. "What about the planet's surface?" she asked. "The atmosphere is toxic to most known life forms," the computer replied. "Gravity is 1.3 times Earth normal. Surface temperature averages -40 degrees. The mining facilities extend deep underground with the deepest levels reaching nearly to the planet's core." Minji sat back in her chair and thought. A direct assault was impossible. Even if she could fight through the orbital defenses, she would never be able to search the entire planet for Dohyun. She needed a different approach. "Computer, can you detect any weaknesses in their defense grid?" Analyzing. "Yes. There is a narrow corridor between platforms 7 and 8 where sensor coverage overlaps ineffectively. A ship using maximum stealth could potentially slip through undetected. And once we're on the surface?" "The mining facilities have thousands of entrances and ventilation shafts. Many appear to be unguarded. However, the underground tunnels form a maze spanning hundreds of square miles." Minji made her decision. "Set course for the gap between platforms 7 and 8. Engage maximum stealth mode." The Persistence became completely invisible as it approached the planet. Even the most advanced Krathan sensors could not detect it. The ship slipped through the gap in the defense grid like a ghost and entered the toxic atmosphere. Minji piloted the ship carefully between the massive industrial structures on the surface. Smokestacks belched poisonous fumes into the air. Giant conveyor belts carried ore from deep underground to processing facilities. The entire planet was one enormous mining operation. She found a landing spot in a canyon hidden from the main facilities. As soon as the ship touched down, she began preparing for the most dangerous part of her mission. The environmental suit she put on was another piece of advanced Earth technology. It could adapt to any atmosphere and protect her from extreme temperatures and radiation. The suit's computer would constantly monitor her surroundings and adjust its systems automatically. "Dr. Park," the ship's computer said as she prepared to leave, "I must warn you that the chances of successfully infiltrating the mining facility are extremely low. Even if you locate your son, extracting him from a heavily guarded prison complex will be nearly impossible." "My son is down there somewhere," Minji replied as she checked her equipment. "I'm not leaving without him." She stepped out of the ship into the harsh alien environment. The wind howled around her, carrying clouds of poisonous dust. In the distance, she could see the lights of the mining complex glowing through the toxic fog. Minji activated her suit's camouflage system and began moving toward the facility. The suit made her nearly invisible, bending light around her body like the ship's stealth field. She moved carefully across the barren landscape, avoiding patrols and automated sensors. The mining complex was even larger up close than it had appeared from orbit. Massive towers stretched up into the poisonous sky while deep shafts descended into the planet's core. Thousands of beings moved through the facility like ants, most of them clearly prisoners working under guard. Minji found an unguarded ventilation shaft and lowered herself into the complex. The tunnels inside were hot and filled with the sound of machinery. She could hear voices echoing through the passages, some speaking in languages she recognized, others completely alien. She followed the tunnels deeper underground, using her suit's sensors to scan for human life signs. The facility was enormous, with passages branching off in every direction. Thousands of prisoners were housed in different sections based on their species and abilities. As she moved through the tunnels, Minji saw things that made her angry beyond words. Prisoners from dozens of different species were forced to work in terrible conditions. They mined radioactive ore with primitive tools while Krathen guards watched them with shock weapons ready. Many of the prisoners looked sick and exhausted. Some were clearly dying from exposure to radiation and toxic chemicals. The Krathen treated them like disposable tools, working them until they collapsed and then replacing them with fresh captives. Minji had seen slavery before in history books, but seeing it in person filled her with rage. These were not just statistics or distant problems. They were real beings suffering under brutal oppression. She continued deeper into the facility, following the human life signs her sensors had detected. The deeper levels were worse than the upper ones. The air was hotter and more toxic. The radiation levels would have killed an unprotected human in minutes. Finally, in the deepest level of the mine, she found what she was looking for. A large chamber held hundreds of prisoners from various species. They were chained to walls and workstations, forced to extract quantum crystals from raw ore with their bare hands. The crystals glowed with dangerous energy that slowly poisoned anyone who handled them. And there, in the far corner of the chamber, she saw him. Do-hyun was barely recognizable. He had lost weight and his skin was pale from radiation exposure. His hands were cut and bleeding from handling the sharp crystals. But he was alive. Minji's heart nearly broke when she saw her son's condition. The young man who had left Earth, healthy and excited about his research, was now a broken prisoner barely surviving in this hellish place. She moved closer, staying invisible in the shadows. Do-hyun was working alongside other prisoners, all of them moving slowly due to exhaustion and sickness. Krathen guards patrolled the chamber with energy weapons, ready to punish anyone who stopped working. But Do-hyun was not alone. Minji realized that many of the prisoners in this chamber were from species that were supposed to be extinct. The Krathen had been capturing the last survivors of conquered races and using them as slave labor. One prisoner near Do-hyun looked like no creature she had ever seen in galactic databases. Its skin was silver and it had 6 arms that moved with surprising grace despite the chains. Another prisoner appeared to be from a plant-based species that most scientists thought was mythical. Minji understood that she was not just looking at a prison, she was seeing the Krathen's secret collection of rare and valuable beings. This facility was where they kept prisoners who were too unique or valuable to simply kill. She activated her suit's recording system and began documenting everything she saw. The galaxy needed to know what the Krathen were doing here, but first she had to figure out how to free these prisoners without getting them all killed in the process. As she watched the guards' patrol patterns and studied the chamber's layout, Do-hyun suddenly looked up from his work. For just a moment, his eyes seemed to look directly at her hiding spot. "Mom?" he whispered so quietly that only her suit's enhanced sensors could pick up the sound. Minji's heart jumped. Somehow her son knew she was there. Minji moved closer to her son, staying in the shadows. She could see the hope in Do-hyun's eyes as he pretended to keep working. The other prisoners near him had noticed something was happening, but they stayed quiet. She activated her suit's communication system and spoke directly into Do-hyun's ear through a targeted sound beam that only he could hear. "I'm here to get you out," she whispered. "But we need to free everyone. Can you help organize the prisoners?" Do-hyun nodded slightly without looking up from his work. Over the next hour, he quietly spread the word to other prisoners in the chamber. The message was simple. Be ready to fight when the signal came. Minji spent that time studying the facility's computer systems. Her suit could interface with alien technology, and she quickly gained access to the mining complex's main network. What she found there made her plan much bigger than just rescuing her son. The facility's computers contained detailed information about every prisoner. There were beings here from over 200 different species. Many were from worlds the Krathen had completely destroyed, making these prisoners the last survivors of their entire races. But more importantly, Minji discovered that the mining operation was not just about extracting ore. The quantum crystals being mined here were used to power the Krathen's most advanced weapons. This single facility supplied energy crystals for their entire war fleet. If she could destroy this place, she would cripple the Krathan Empire's military power for years. Minji made her decision. She would free the prisoners and destroy the facility at the same time. But first, she needed to even the odds. She began hacking into the facility's systems, starting with the security network. The Krathan used automated systems to monitor the prisoners and control the guards. If she could turn those systems against them, she could create chaos throughout the complex. Her first target was the guard rotation system. She reprogrammed it to send most of the guards to false emergencies in empty sections of the facility. Within minutes, the number of guards in the prisoner areas dropped by half. Next, she accessed the environmental controls. The Krathan needed a specific atmosphere to breathe, different from most of their prisoners. She began slowly changing the air mixture in the guard areas, making it harder for them to function while keeping the prisoner areas safe. Then she found something even better. The facility used automated mining equipment throughout the complex. Massive drilling machines, ore processors, and transport systems were all controlled by the central computer. And now Minji controlled that computer. She sent a message to Do-hyun through her targeted communication system. "In 5 minutes, every alarm in this place is going to go off," she told him. "When that happens, lead the prisoners toward the main elevator. I'll clear the path for you." Do-hyun passed the message to the other prisoners. They all tensed, ready for action despite their weakness and exhaustion. Minji began her attack. First, she triggered every fire alarm and emergency alert in the facility. Sirens blared throughout the complex as confused guards rushed to respond to dozens of false emergencies. Then she activated the mining equipment. Massive drilling machines that normally cut through rock began tearing through walls and floors. Ore processors designed to crush stone started destroying support beams. Transport belts carrying heavy materials suddenly changed direction, crashing into guard posts and control rooms. The facility shook as hundreds of tons of machinery began systematically destroying itself under Minji's control. In the prisoner chamber, the remaining guards were confused and frightened by the chaos. When the prisoner suddenly stood up and began moving toward the exits, the guards tried to stop them. They quickly discovered that was a mistake. The prisoners had been waiting for this moment for months or years. They were weak from abuse and poor treatment, but they outnumbered the guards 50-1, and they were fighting for their freedom. Do-hyun, despite his condition, became one of the leaders of the prisoner revolt. He helped organize the different species, using his scientific knowledge to coordinate beings who could barely communicate with each other. The silver-skinned prisoner with 6 arms turned out to be incredibly strong. It broke through the chamber's main door with its bare hands. The plant-based prisoner released spores that made the guards dizzy and confused. Other prisoners used tools and equipment as weapons. Some were naturally strong or fast. Others had special abilities their captors had never suspected. Within minutes, the prisoner chamber was under the control of the freed slaves. But Minji was just getting started. She had taken control of the facility's main computer, and through it, she controlled everything. She opened all the prisoner cells throughout the complex. She shut down the energy barriers that kept different sections separated. She turned off the toxic gas systems that kept prisoners weak. Thousands of beings throughout the facility suddenly found themselves free for the first time in years. The Krathan guards were completely overwhelmed. They had prepared for prisoner riots before, but never anything like this. The facility's own systems were attacking them. The mining equipment was destroying their positions, and every prisoner in the complex was now fighting for freedom. Minji guided the escaped prisoners through the facility using the intercom system. She spoke in dozens of different languages, directing different groups toward exits and safety zones she had prepared. But her biggest surprise was still coming. She had discovered that the facility's main power source was connected directly to the planet's core through massive drilling shafts. The quantum mining operation had created a direct pathway to the molten center of Kratos Prime. If she overloaded the power systems at just the right moment, she could cause a chain reaction that would destroy the entire facility. But she had to get the prisoners to safety first. "All prisoners move to the surface immediately," she announced over the intercom. "Use the emergency tunnels. You have 30 minutes to reach minimum safe distance. The escaped prisoners moved through the facility like a flood, overwhelming any remaining resistance. Years of anger and hatred drove them forward as they fought their way to freedom. Do-hyun led a group of the weakest prisoners, helping those who could barely walk. Despite his own injuries, he refused to leave anyone behind. As the prisoners reached the surface, they found Minji's ship waiting for them. The Persistence had automatically moved to the best evacuation point and was ready to take on survivors. But there were too many prisoners for one ship to carry. That's when the real surprise came. Other ships began appearing in the toxic sky above. Krathos Prime. Not Krathan ships, but vessels from dozens of different species. Word of the prison break had somehow spread, and rescue ships were arriving from across the galaxy. The prisoners looked up in amazement as their own people came to save them. Species that had thought their people extinct were reunited with lost family members. As the last prisoners reached safety, Minji activated the final part of her plan. Deep underground, the facility's power systems overloaded exactly as she had calculated. The chain reaction began slowly, then built rapidly as more and more energy fed back into the planet's core. Krathos Prime began to shake as massive explosions tore through the mining shafts. The Krathan's most important facility, and their most valuable prisoners, were gone forever. The news of Krathos Prime's destruction spread across the galaxy faster than anyone thought possible. Within hours, every major news network was broadcasting the same incredible story. A single human mother had infiltrated the Krathan Empire's most secure facility, freed thousands of prisoners, and destroyed their primary weapon manufacturing center. But the real shock came when the rescued prisoners began telling their stories. Captain Jiwan of the Galactic News Network stood before the camera in the refugee center on Sanctuary Station, where the freed prisoners were being treated and interviewed. "This is the most remarkable story I have ever reported," she said to billions of viewers across the galaxy. "Behind me are beings from over 200 species, many of whom were thought to be completely extinct. They were rescued from certain death by Dr. Minji Park of Earth, a human mother searching for her missing son." The camera turned to show some of the rescued prisoners. There was Kelthar, the silver-skinned being with 6 arms, who spoke for his people. "For 3 years I believed I was the last of my kind," Kelthar said, his voice shaking with emotion. "The Krathan destroyed my world and told me my people were gone forever. But yesterday I learned that 47 of my species survived in that terrible place. We are alive, because one human mother refused to give up." Other prisoners shared similar stories. Entire species that the galaxy had mourned as lost were discovered to be imprisoned in the Krathan facility. The plant-based Verdani, the crystalline quartzlings, the energy beings called luminals, all of them had survivors who were now free. But the most shocking testimony came from Commander Haeun, a former Krathan military officer who had been imprisoned for refusing to follow an order to massacre civilians. "The human woman did something impossible," Commander Haeun told the interviewer. "She took control of our most advanced computer systems like they were toys. She turned our own weapons against us. She destroyed a facility that was supposed to be impregnable. No species in the galaxy has technology that advanced." News anchors and military experts across the galaxy struggled to understand what had happened. How could humans, who were considered primitive by everyone, possess such incredible technology? The answer came during an emergency session of the Galactic Council. Admiral Yojin of Earth Defense Forces stood before the assembled representatives of 500 worlds. Many of them had never taken humanity seriously before, but now they hung on her every word. "For 20 years, Earth has been quietly developing advanced technology," Admiral Yojin announced. "We studied every piece of alien technology that came our way. We learned from every species we met, and we built something better." She activated a holographic display that showed images of human ships and weapons that no one in the galaxy had ever seen before. "We kept our capabilities secret because we believed in peace," she continued. "We thought it was better to appear weak and avoid conflict. But when one of our people needed help, when the galaxy's authorities refused to act, we showed what humans are really capable of." The reaction was immediate chaos. Representatives from dozens of species began shouting questions and demands. Some were angry that humans had hidden their technology. Others were frightened by the implications, but the loudest voice belonged to Admiral Velktar of the Galactic Defense Force, the same official who had dismissed Minji's request for help weeks earlier. "This is unacceptable," Admiral Velktar declared. "Humans have been deceiving the entire galaxy. How do we know they are not planning to conquer us all?" Admiral Yeojin looked at him calmly. "Because if we wanted to conquer you, Admiral, we would have done it already. Dr. Park's actions prove what humans really care about. We protect our families. We free the oppressed. We fight for justice. That is what makes us dangerous to empires like the Krathen, not our technology." As if to prove her point, reports began coming in from across the galaxy. Krathen facilities on dozens of worlds were suddenly releasing human prisoners without being asked. Slave markets were freeing their human captives. Pirates were avoiding ships with human crews. The message was clear. No one wanted to face what Minji Park had done to Krathos Prime. Back on Sanctuary Station, Minji sat in the medical center next to her son's bed. Do-hyun was recovering well from his time in the mines, but it would take weeks before he was fully healthy again. "Mom," Do-hyun said weakly, "I can't believe what you did. You destroyed an entire planet to save me." "I destroyed a prison to save you and everyone else trapped there," Minji corrected him. "No parent should ever have to watch their child suffer like that. No being should be enslaved by anyone." Dr. Sang-woo, the station's chief medical officer, entered the room with a data tablet. "Mrs. Park, I have some information you might find interesting. We've been analyzing the rescued prisoners and we've discovered something remarkable." He showed her the tablet screen, which displayed genetic analysis data. Many of these prisoners are from species that supposedly went extinct decades or even centuries ago, Dr. Sang-woo explained. "The Krathen have been secretly keeping survivors as slaves instead of killing them completely. Your rescue operation has literally brought dozens of species back from extinction." Minji looked out the medical center's window at the refugee area, where beings from hundreds of worlds were reuniting with family members they thought were dead forever. A week later, Minji and Do-hyun returned to Earth as heroes. But the real changes were happening throughout the galaxy. The Krathen Empire began collapsing as their enslaved populations rose up in rebellion. Without their primary weapon manufacturing facility, they could not maintain control over their vast territory. World after world declared independence. Other oppressive regimes, seeing what had happened to the Krathen, began releasing prisoners and offering better treatment to their subjects. The fear of facing human intervention kept them in line. The Galactic Council passed new laws protecting the rights of all species and banning slavery throughout known space. They also granted Earth full membership with special status as a protector of galactic freedom. But perhaps the most important change was in how parents throughout the galaxy viewed their responsibilities. On the planet Zerion, a mantid mother named Klikth stood before her local government demanding action to find her missing daughter. When the officials tried to dismiss her, she spoke words that had spread to every world in the galaxy. A human mother traveled across space to save her child and freed thousands in the process, Klikth declared. "If humans can do that for their young, then we must do the same for ours." Similar scenes played out on hundreds of worlds as parents of every species demanded that their governments protect their children. The age of abandoning the lost and forgotten was over. Minji's actions had proven something that resonated across the galaxy. The love of a parent knows no boundaries, accepts no limitations, and fears no enemy. On Earth, Minji returned to her quiet life as a scientist, but she kept the persistence ready in its hidden hangar, just in case. Because somewhere in the vast galaxy another parent might need help finding their child, and every species in the galaxy now knew a simple truth. Never underestimate a human mother protecting her family. The universe had learned to respect not just human technology, but human love, and that respect would last forever.